Hey everybody, welcome to this inaugural episode of Purity Cult Podcast. I'm your host, Nathaniel Schweinberg. Today we're going to be talking about what's it like leaving the church. I was at a bar with my friend the other day, and we're just shooting the shit, talking about life, and he'd asked, I hope this isn't too much, but what's it like believing in a God? And he's a person who, as far as I know, for most or if not all of his life, he's not been involved in religion in any way. So he's, lived without any awareness of what it's like to grow up in a church, grow up believing in some supernatural deity who watches you all the time. And the question hit me pretty, it's a fairly obvious question or a fairly straightforward question, but yeah, it's like, that's not necessarily a shared experience common to humanity. That's not something that everyone goes through in life. It's, while it's likely that a significantly large portion of the population believes in some form of deity or culture surrounding religion in some way, there's also a large portion of the population that doesn't at all. I remember being in church and them saying that so much of Europe is atheist and, God is dead in Europe and whatever. So yeah, the question hit me because it's kind of like is the sky blue question or how do you describe the color of the sky to someone else? How do you describe a relative experience to somebody else? That is so natural to you and natural to those in your community, but may not be natural to someone outside of your circle or outside of your common experience of life. And the way that I explained it in the moment was to say, it's kind of like removing a safety net. When I've moved a bunch in my life and, no matter where I've moved, as a Christian, I've always had a place to belong. No matter where I went, I had some place that I can go to at the very least on Sundays, maybe Wednesdays, and then build a community and find friends and go from there. And that was one of the big ways, is that moving away from college, moving multiple times for work, knowing that basically within 7 days, I have a place to go, that I'm going to meet people that are going to be concerned about me, that will feed me food, depending on the kind of church it is, right? And yeah, I'd definitely say it was a safety net of sorts. And so whenever I left the faith, yeah, it was a safety net that had been pulled out from under me. There was a lack of certainty, because not only had the safety net of a community been ripped out from under me no matter where I go, I had also been believing that God was pretty much on my side. I had someone with supernatural abilities watching out for me. And we can go into like how screwed up that is later, because it really does not hold true, and it's part of the reason why I left. But in my adult years, I'd done a lot of work to see the Christian God as a loving father, and really felt that he was benevolent and in favor of me and had good things to say about me. I don't know who he's talking to, but in general had positive regard for me. And I now no longer had, someone who cared about me watching out for me. And all these decisions were mine to make on my own. And in case you're listening, and it's not abundantly clear, I'm tearing up right now because it still hits, it still hurts years after leaving this of believing most of my life. The first half of my life, I'd say that I didn't think God loved me at all. He didn't care about me, didn't give a shit about me. But in the latter half of my life, up until now anyway, I did think that he cared about me and loved me. And yeah, there was this person whom I loved and cared a great deal about who didn't exist. They were Santa Claus. And I was already someone who was late to that party. I was one of the last kids on the playground to find out that Santa wasn't real. So yeah, circling back to this question that my friend asked, what's it like to believe in a God? For me, it was a safety net in general. It was a safety net in the form of a community of people, the church and the small groups that I was involved in, as well as a safety net of a literal sky daddy looking after me to clean up my mess if I'd ever made a mistake that had gone wrong. Because I did the opposite. I did not make a lot of mistakes in my life. I was a very good kid, and was just immensely fortunate straight out of college, because I was able to be self-employed immediately. Was I making a lot of money? No, I was not making a lot of money. It took me quite a few years to actually get up to a decent salary. But, you know, I felt, again, this safety net of, here I am out on my own, doing my own thing, responsible for my own, putting food on the table is my responsibility. I mean, everyone shares that responsibility, but like, I didn't have a job that I applied for with a consistent paycheck. I had a very inconsistent paycheck. That whole idea, if you've ever talked to anyone that's self-employed, a feast or famine, very much of what it was. And it took me a while to figure out how to make those feast seasons last during the famine seasons. And now on this side of things being, now I consider myself an agnostic atheist, that safety net is gone. And that both brings freedom, because now the decisions that I can make in my life are far less restricted. It is also, you know, terrifying at times, because I do not have that same level of confidence that I'll be okay on the other side of it, you know, and that fucking hurts. But that is the world that we're all born into, unfortunately. Circling back to a topic that I brought up earlier, which was believing that I had a God who was on my side growing up specifically, and, you know, how that changed in my early 20s. So a little history. Whenever I had graduated college, I moved from Tallahassee, Florida. I went to Florida State University and moved to Nashville for a summer internship, because the plan, I was interning at my church at the time, was to go intern for this other production company, learn what I could learn, and then come back and share that with the church. During that time, I had experienced some really intense, powerful moments with what I believed to be the Holy Spirit at church those first few weeks that I was there. Leading up to all of this, I was kind of at the end of my rope spiritually. This is one of the first times that I would burn out of religion, that I would burn out of Christianity. It was the end of my senior year, and I was just pretty tired of, quote unquote, doing all the right things and not having any, not seeing any benefits for it. I'll probably go into that in another episode, but yeah, I was pretty tired of it. So I move away and have these really, really powerful experiences with God, and ultimately, you know, kind of all coalesces into what I consider a theophany, or like what I experienced to be the physical manifestation of God. And in this case, it wasn't necessarily like, oh my God, I saw a shining presence in my room or whatever, but I did hear a voice, and I did perceive that I felt a hand on my chest. And what I'd heard, and this was at like 1 or 2 in the morning, what I heard was someone say the word "stay," and I felt a light pressure on my chest. I felt like a hand, or what I ascribed the feeling of a hand to be. And what it had said was really simple. It just said this, the single word "stay." It just said "stay." And I remember doing a double take and being like, what? And it said "stay." It's, or not in that tone, but just "stay" once more. And at the time, that was just extraordinarily powerful for me, because what I felt it was saying was stay in Nashville. And carrying that even out further was do what you want to do. Because up until that point in time, I was, 21, I think. I didn't believe that it was my right to do what I wanted to do. I didn't think God wanted me to do what I wanted to do. My vision of what it meant to serve God and to operate in ministry was basically hell. Just do whatever God wanted me to do, and that wouldn't really ever be, well, to be completely honest, it was a rather, frankly, racist perspective of, oh my God, that means I have to go to Africa or some third world nation and suffer in the dust with other people. Which, now I am ashamed that that was my perspective, and am very aware now that is a terrible perspective to have in the first place. I hate that I had it. And, I'm really sad and I'm really sorry that I held that perspective for as long as I did, because it completely ignores their humanity. It completely ignores the image of God in those people, and represents a fairly significant amount of colonial mindset that was just built in to me, ingrained into me. And I don't know, well, at some point we'll have an episode talking about colonialism and empire and all sort of stuff concerning Christianity, but that's not today. So all that is to say, up until that point in my life, I didn't really think God was on my side. It was transitioning quite a bit during college. I'd say I had a relatively good college experience when it comes to God and interacting with people in the faith and whatnot. But it really wasn't until after college and these really precious few years afterwards where I felt I had experienced the quote unquote goodness of God. Because up until that point, God was extraordinarily judgmental. He was, bitter and vindictive and just not a very kind person. So for this vision of God to change so radically was pretty big, because growing up, I had a mother who was mentally ill, who I would later find out was actually diagnosed when I was very young, but either didn't seek treatment or something. And worse yet, my dad is completely aware of her behavior and decided to stay and didn't really do anything. He was a wet noodle. He just bent whenever she raised her voice, kind of deal. So I didn't have anyone looking out for me at home. Father was in the military anyway, so he was absent a fair bit of the time. So these first 18 years of my life are spent very insecure, as in support structures that should be there to help me grow up in a safe environment weren't there. It was actively hostile. So this idea that I had a God, an all-powerful, all-benevolent being looking out for me, is just so preposterous now, given the things that I went through and that countless of us have gone through. This idea that, oh my God, God is on our side. He's looking out for me. No, he never is, and he never was, and never has. Because if he was, he would have protected you and I as small children. He would have stepped in. He would have done something. If he is truly all-powerful, all good, all-knowing, omnipresent, all the omnis. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head right now, but I likened this to a friend of mine's. I was a guest on a friend of mine's podcast, and I likened it to a family member. I think I said this on their podcast, but I likened it to a family member. If you are aware that, let's say it's your brother has a kid. If you're aware your brother beats the shit out of his kids and do nothing about it, you're culpable. That's why we have mandated reporters. That's why therapists and teachers and all these sorts of things are mandated legally to report abuse. Because if there is no intervention, it will just continue and the child will continue to be hurt over and over and over again. So it's just super perplexing to me that we would hold relatives, friends, coworkers, whatever, to a different standard than a supreme being, a deity that is everywhere all the time, knows everything and can do anything. How on earth do we not hold them to the same standard or a higher standard given their ability to intervene? And a common Christian argument against it is, well, you can't change the laws of physics. Fucking yeah, you can. He's God. He can do anything. That is I think that was C.S. Lewis's argument in The Problem of Pain, is that if you're walking around and pain in itself is bad, then God would have to intervene whenever you trip over a rock or trip over a log, and either make you float in midair or halt gravity in a small space for a little bit in order to prevent you from feeling pain. To be clear, that's not what I'm arguing. I'm not saying that pain is bad. Pain is neutral. Pain in and of itself is just a signal that our brain receives from nerves in our body saying, this hurts, do something about it. That, however, is different when it comes to abuse and when it comes to the development of a child and as an adult, like not development of an adult, but the condition of life as an adult. If you go through pain all the time, pain is experienced in the mind outside of time. It's that if you're in pain, I believe this pain is going to last forever. And our conscious mind has to say, no, I'm going to disregard the signal that says this is going to last forever and point to a time in the hopefully near future that this is going to end, which is torturous. Oh my God, is that torturous? Now imagine if you're a child and have no agency, no ability to affect the world around you, or very little ability to affect the world around you, and are experiencing pain on a constant basis. Maybe it's intermittent, maybe it's not very common, or for a fair number of us, it was every fucking day. That is torture on the mind. How can I say that God is a loving God and is aware of this constant torture? I can't, not anymore. And if there is a deity, I certainly cannot say that they're all of the alls that I mentioned before, all of the omnis, that they're either impotent, they are not all powerful, they're ignorant, they're not all knowing, or they're vindictive, they're not all loving. I just, knowing what I'm just experiencing right now, talking about this, recounting this, I can't in good conscience say that there's a good, loving, all-knowing, all-powerful God with my experience alone, not counting the billions of people I have on the planet now and however many millions and billions of people that have lived before us. No, it's unjustifiable. Which brings me back to the very beginning of what, started this whole episode. What's it like to leave the church? What's it like to believe in a God? I guess I'll start with what is it like now? It's painful. Because there's this person that I loved, this thing that I loved with all my heart for a long time, who I thought was real, and who I thought cared for me, that just doesn't exist anymore. And in fact, just wasn't there in the first place. It's hard on this side of things. When I was in it, it was better. I was able to segment the difficult theologies in my mind and thankfully had some level of humility to say, at least later in my years, that I didn't know the answer to certain questions. And now I have a lot more confidence in these questions because it's like, no, I don't stand for this. The abuse and the ignoring of pain that people are causing, which we can go into more detail in future episodes. So to all my other adventurers in life, I'll call us, those who have left the faith or are in the process of leaving the faith or have never even been in the faith in the first place, that fear, that uncertainty, I just want to say that I see you and I see that in you, and I know it's scary. It can be scary. It's a weird adjustment period for those that deal with that. That may not even be an issue for you. You may not even be concerned about that. I don't know. Goodness, that was unexpectedly heavy. I did not think this would be as emotional as it was to talk about, but I hope you enjoyed yourself. It was so nice having you here. I just wanted to close with at least a little bit of a transition just because of how heavy that was. I see you. I hope this is validating for you. I hope this is in some way shining light on your experience. If you haven't had anyone to say it this way, perhaps, or point out things that that hasn't consciously come to your mind. I hope this is helpful. And that's my goal in this. That's my desire in this, is that I want to at least just voice a common experience in perhaps words that haven't been used before. I wish you well. I hope to see you again soon. And until next time, I'll see you later.